Welcome to our deep dive into the world of George Orwell's 1984.
Oh, exciting.
We'll be using excerpts from the audiobook today.
Okay.
So we'll be experiencing this dystopian world through Winston's own ears, literally,
Interesting.
ready to see what chilling insights we can extract.
Absolutely. I think,
Sure.
it's important to remember that 1984 is a work of fiction,
Right.
but it reflects these very real anxieties that Orwell had about totalitarianism and control.
Yeah.
And I think focusing on how those themes are kind of woven into the narrative can give us a really powerful new lens for, looking at those issues in the world around us.
Okay, so let's dive right in.
Yeah.
Let's start with the atmosphere that Orwell creates right from the get-go.
Okay.
Right away, we encounter these telescreens that receive and transmit patrols snooping into people's windows and this constant looming presence of the thought police.
Right.
It feels like privacy is just completely non-existent, even in your own home.
It's fascinating how Orwell uses these very, visceral sensory details to really drive this point home.
Yeah.
Think about the grinding screech of the telescreen during the 2 Minutes Hate, or the sheep-like face of Goldstein.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't just tell us about the party's control,
Mm-hmm.
he makes us feel it, physically.
It's true. And the way he describes the Ministry of Truth, an enormous pyramidal structure of glittering white concrete, it's so imposing, almost dehumanizing.
Yes.
Like the building itself embodies the party's power.
Exactly. And it creates this really stark contrast with Winston's own kind of cramped apartment, where he has to hide in this tiny little alcove to write in his diary outside the range of the telescreen. Orwell highlights both Winston's desperate desire for individual expression, but also the constant awareness that he is always being watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of that diary, the detail about that beautiful book he finds really stood out to me.
Okay.
The smooth, creamy paper that hasn't been manufactured in decades. It felt like it represented something so pure. It's like a connection to a lost time.
You've hit on something really, really important there. That book and the act of writing in it becomes Winston's act of rebellion.
Right.
In a society where all narratives are controlled, he's trying to reclaim his own version of the past, his own individual story.
And that control is everywhere. It really is.
It is.
The party even manipulates language itself.
Yes.
Through newspeak.
Yes.
With the goal of eliminating words that could express rebellious thoughts.
Newspeak is chilling because it goes way beyond simple censorship. It demonstrates how those in power can control thought itself by controlling the very tools we use to think. It's like, if you remove the word freedom, you're not just banning a word, you're making the very concept unthinkable.
That's a really disturbing thought.
It is.
And it's not just language they control, it's history too. Winston's job at the Ministry of Truth is literally altering records to fit the party's current agenda.
Right.
Isn't it terrifying to think that the past can be manipulated so easily?
What's so interesting is that Winston actually remembers the truth.
He does.
He remembers Oceania being allied with Eurasia just a few years ago, even though the party is now claiming otherwise.
Yeah.
And this internal struggle, clinging to the truth even when you're forced to participate in the lie, is at the heart of Winston's rebellion.
The party even tries to control something as fundamental as personal relationships.
Yes.
We see this in the Junior Anti-Sex League and the whole artificial insemination program.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to eliminate all natural human connection.
If we connect this back to that bigger picture, it's pretty clear that this is part of their larger goal of just eliminating individuality altogether.
Yeah.
Think about it. Love, family, even sexual desire, they all foster independent thought and emotions.
Right.
All threats to the party's absolute control.
So then Winston's relationship with Julia becomes even more rebellious, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Their secret meetings, those stolen moments of intimacy.
Yeah.
It's like this powerful act of defiance against the party's control over their lives.
And it's important to notice here that their relationship isn't just about sex.
Right.
It's about reclaiming these simple pleasures. Things like real coffee and sugar that the party has denied to outer party members like them.
Right.
They're carving out this tiny space where they can be human, where they can experience joy and connection in this world that is determined to just stamp that out.
There are these glimmers of hope throughout the story, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, Winston seems to believe in the power of the proles, the working class.
Right.
He sees their strength and thinks they have the potential to overthrow the party.
There's definitely that sense of hope there, but also a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Orwell seems to question whether the proles are even capable of recognizing their own power.
Yeah.
They're so easily distracted, by things like the lottery, and they just kind of accept the party's control with barely any resistance.
It makes you wonder, if you were in Oceania, what act of rebellion you would be willing to risk?
Yeah.
Would it be something as simple as keeping a diary? Or
Yeah.
seeking out a forbidden love?
Yeah.
Or would it be something even more radical? I guess that's something for all of you to think about as we continue our deep dive.
That's a great place to pause for now.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll delve a little deeper into the party's manipulation of reality and how Winston's internal struggle against that plays out.
Sounds good.
So, one of the most disturbing things about the party's control is, like, the way they manipulate reality.
Yeah.
It's not even just that they want to control what you do. They want to control what you think, how you see the world, even your own memories.
It's like that really chilling party slogan: who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
Exactly.
It's literally rewriting history to fit their agenda, and like anyone who remembers the real past becomes a threat.
Exactly. And Winston's job at the Ministry of Truth is such a powerful symbol of this, right?
It
He
is.
spends his days altering records, fabricating stories, even creating entirely fictional people to just serve this party narrative.
It's almost unbelievable. He even has to rectify a speech by Big Brother to make it seem like Big Brother had praised this like totally non-existent person, Comrade Ogilvy.
And what's so disturbing is that Winston knows he's participating in a lie, but he's totally powerless to stop it.
Yeah.
He's forced to betray his own intellect, his own memory,
Yeah.
to become complicit in this distortion of reality.
It makes you wonder if we are all susceptible to that kind of manipulation.
Absolutely.
And it's not just history, right? This manipulation extends to language, too, especially
Yeah.
through newspeak.
What's so fascinating about Newspeak is that it's designed to limit thought by, literally shrinking the number of words available to even express complex ideas.
Yeah.
The party believes that if they can control language, they can control thought itself.
So just, using certain words could be considered thought crime.
Precisely. It's terrifying.
Orwell is warning us about the dangers of censorship, like how vital it is to protect language.
Yeah.
Language is the foundation of thought, and a rich, complex language allows for, nuanced thought, nuanced expression.
It makes you realize how essential freedom of expression is for, any free society.
Absolutely. Without the ability to speak freely, to question, to debate ideas openly, we become so incredibly vulnerable to this kind of manipulation and control.
The party's control over personal relationships is another really disturbing aspect of this world.
It is.
It's like they see any genuine human connection as a threat.
The party views love, family, any kind of strong emotional bond, as dangerous because, it fosters individuality, independent thought.
Right.
They want to sever those bonds and replace them with loyalty to the party.
And we see that in the Junior Anti-Sex League, which promotes celibacy,
Yeah.
and even in the party's, promotion of artificial insemination.
Yeah. It seems like they want to control even the most fundamental aspects of human existence.
This really underscores how totalitarian regimes aim to control every single facet of life, from the public sphere down to the most private, intimate experiences.
Against this backdrop of total control, Winston's relationship with Julia becomes even more powerful, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Like their secret meetings, those stolen moments of intimacy.
Yeah.
It's like a way of defying the party and reclaiming their humanity.
Exactly. And it's so crucial to see that their relationship isn't just about physical desire.
Right.
It's about reclaiming those basic human experiences that the party has tried to eliminate. Love, connection, pleasure.
It's interesting how they even manage to get real coffee, sugar, chocolate, things that are denied to outer party members.
Right, those little indulgences almost become these symbols of their resistance.
Right.
They're reclaiming those little joys, those sensory experiences that the party has deemed unnecessary or even subversive.
Their relationship does offer this glimmer of hope in this otherwise very bleak world, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
It shows that even in the most oppressive conditions, the human spirit can still find ways to resist, to connect, to find joy.
That hope, though, is very fragile.
It is.
Orwell doesn't shy away from the danger, the constant threat of the thought police kind of looming over them.
It creates this tension where you're like rooting for Winston and Julia, but at the same time, you're like terrified for them knowing the risks they're taking.
And that tension is part of what makes 1984 so compelling, you know?
Yeah.
It forces us to confront how fragile freedom really is and how we need to be constantly vigilant in protecting it, even in our own world.
One of the most intriguing parts of the book for me was Winston's like fascination with the proles.
Right.
They're a huge part of the population, but they seem totally indifferent to the party's control.
The proles, the working class, they make up the vast majority of Oceania, yet they seem largely unconcerned with the party's grip on their lives. They're much more focused on like the day-to-day, their families, simple pleasures like the lottery.
And Winston seems to see them as this potential source of change, right?
He does.
He believes that if the proles were to become aware of their own power, they could actually overthrow the party.
There's definitely this sense of hope and despair kind of intertwined in how Winston views the proles.
Yeah.
He admires their strength, their vitality, their ability to like hold on to some semblance of humanity in this like incredibly dehumanizing world.
But he also recognizes their apathy, right?
He does.
They seem content to live in ignorance, distracted by these like trivial things, and they just accept the party's control without much resistance.
It raises a really important question. Can a population that's apathetic and uninformed be a force for change?
Right.
Is ignorance bliss, or does it ultimately lead to enslavement?
And that's a question that feels so incredibly relevant today, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like we see how misinformation, propaganda, and apathy can like eat away at the very foundations of a free society.
Absolutely. It underscores how important education is, how crucial critical thinking is, and like the responsibility of active citizenship.
Yeah.
We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to challenge those in power if we actually want to preserve our freedoms.
It's definitely a very sobering thought, but also like a call to action,
Absolutely.
We can't afford to be complacent, to just take our freedoms for granted.
1984 is a warning, but it's also a reminder that we have the power to shape our own destinies, but only if we're willing to fight for what we believe in.
And sometimes that fight involves what seem like really small acts of rebellion, right?
Absolutely.
Like keeping a diary, seeking out forbidden knowledge, even just holding on to a memory the party has tried to erase.
Those small acts of defiance can be incredibly powerful. They can keep that flame of hope alive, even in the darkest of times.
And that brings us to Winston's search for, like, the truth about the past. He's haunted by these fragments of memories, this feeling that the world wasn't always this oppressive.
He seeks out an elderly prole, hoping to, glean some insights into life before the revolution. But all he encounters are these vague memories, these jumbled details.
It's such a frustrating experience for Winston and for us as readers,
It is.
Like, we want him to find that concrete evidence, that undeniable proof that the party is lying.
But what Orwell's highlighting here is this crucial point. When history is constantly rewritten, when truth itself becomes malleable, how can we even know what's real?
And that's a question that feels even more relevant today with, information overload and the rise of fake news.
Absolutely.
We're bombarded with these competing narratives, and it's so hard to know what to believe.
Exactly. It becomes more important than ever to be, critical consumers of information, to scrutinize our sources, and to be wary of those who seek to manipulate our perceptions.
Orwell reminds us that truth is precious, something to be fiercely defended.
And that defense often starts with those small acts of resistance,
Yeah.
questioning authority, seeking out diverse perspectives, and refusing to just accept the official narrative.
These are like the seeds of rebellion, maybe even revolution.
Absolutely.
They may not seem like much, but they have the potential to blossom into something truly powerful.
Exactly. That's why Orwell's message continues to resonate, all these years later.
Right.
It's a timeless warning about totalitarianism, but it's also a reminder that we have agency.
Yeah.
We have the power to shape the future, but only if we're willing to stand up and fight for what we believe in.
There's something particularly chilling about the way Winston and Julia end up, renting that room above Mr. Charrington's shop.
Right.
It seems like this safe haven, a place where they can be together, away from the party's watchful eye.
That room becomes this powerful symbol of their rebellion.
Right.
It represents their attempt to carve out a little space of freedom in this incredibly oppressive world.
They furnish it with, like, items from the past, a glass paperweight, a print of St. Clement's Dane, even a real coffee set.
Right.
These objects are like talismans, connecting them to a time before the party's control.
But that safe haven, as you know, is an illusion.
Right. It turns out that Mr. Charrington is actually a member of the Thought Police, and the room has been bugged this whole time.
A whole time, yeah.
Their capture there is just devastating.
It's a brutal reminder that there's no real escape from the party's surveillance.
Right.
No matter how careful they are, how hidden they think they are, the party is always watching.
Always watching. It's heartbreaking, but it also raises some really important questions about trust and, like, the pervasive reach of the party's power.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, if you can't even trust someone who seems harmless, who can you trust?
Right.
Orwell shows us how totalitarian regimes can infiltrate even the most private spaces, turning neighbors against each other, breaking down the very fabric of society.
And it's a chilling reminder that we need to be wary of those who seek to divide us, who sow mistrust and suspicion amongst us.
Absolutely.
So we need to, like, build bridges of understanding, foster empathy and compassion if we actually want to resist these forces of oppression.
Precisely. Orwell's message goes beyond, just the dangers of totalitarianism.
Right.
It's about the importance of human connection, solidarity, and collective resistance in the face of tyranny.
And that's a message that resonates so deeply even today.
It does.
We see how authoritarian regimes around the world are trying to, like, isolate individuals, break down communities, silence any kind of dissent.
And it underscores the importance of speaking out against injustice, supporting the marginalized, and working together to create a more just and equitable world.
It's a challenging task, no doubt, but it's one we have to embrace if we want to honor the legacy of those who fought for freedom before us.
Absolutely. 1984 isn't just a dystopian novel. It's a blueprint for resistance, reminding us that the fight for freedom is an ongoing struggle, one that demands our commitment and constant vigilance.
They've taken the most basic, like, human instincts and just twisted them into something that serves their agenda.
Yeah, it really is this chilling reminder of how those in power can exploit our most basic needs and desires to, further their own goals. And it makes Winston and Julia's decision to rebel, to seek out love and connection, all the more courageous, don't you think?
Definitely. Their relationship really does become like a powerful symbol of hope in this oppressive world. It shows that even in the face of this overwhelming control, the human spirit can still find ways to resist, connect, and experience joy.
Absolutely. But, Orwell doesn't let us forget the ever-present danger that they face.
Right.
Their rebellion is like a constant dance with the Thought Police.
It is.
Just this constant reminder that even the smallest act of defiance can have some really, dire consequences.
As we've been talking about all these different aspects of 1984, it's become clear that Orwell isn't just writing, a dystopian thriller.
Right.
He's offering us this really profound reflection on what it even means to be human.
Exactly. The novel is grappling with these really fundamental questions about truth, power, the very nature of reality.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about our own capacity for cruelty, for conformity, for self-deception.
One of the things that's always really stuck with me is how easily Winston is ultimately broken by the party.
Right.
He goes from, this defiant rebel to a completely submissive party member, even betraying the one person he loved most.
It's such a stark reminder
Yeah.
that even the strongest-willed among us can be broken under, the right circumstances. The party's methods, the physical torture, the psychological manipulation, that relentless propaganda.
Right.
I mean, it's incredibly effective.
It's almost terrifying to think that someone's entire belief system can be completely rewired, their memories altered, their deepest loyalties shattered.
And that's exactly the point that Orwell is driving home, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's showing us how vulnerable we all are to manipulation.
Right.
How easily our perceptions can be distorted and how readily we conform to the demands of those in power, even if it means betraying everything we hold dear.
It's a sobering thought for sure, but I think it's also a call to action.
Absolutely.
It reminds us to be vigilant, to guard our own minds, to question the information we're given, and resist any attempt to manipulate our thoughts and our emotions.
We need to constantly cultivate our critical thinking skills,
Yeah.
be aware of the tactics of propaganda, and cherish our freedom of thought and expression now more than ever.
The ending of 1984 is, well, bleak, to say the least.
It is.
Winston's final acceptance of the party's ideology and his embrace of Big Brother is just like deeply unsettling.
It's this really chilling reminder of how totalitarian regimes can ultimately succeed in just crushing dissent and creating a society of like obedient, unquestioning citizens.
But even in that bleakness, I don't know, is there a glimmer of hope?
Hmm.
Like, is Orwell suggesting that resistance is futile? Or is he saying something more about, like, the human spirit?
I think he's showing us that the fight for freedom is this ongoing struggle, one that requires constant vigilance, a willingness to never give up.
Right.
It's a warning about the dangers of complacency, of allowing those in power to control our thoughts, our language, our very history.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into 1984, I'm left with this sense of, I don't know, unease, but also this renewed appreciation for, like, the fragility of freedom.
I think that's a very natural response. Orwell's novel is meant to provoke us,
It does?
to make us question our assumptions
Yeah.
and confront some, uncomfortable truths about power and control. But ultimately, I think it reminds us that we do have a choice.
We do?
We can choose to be passive, to conform, to accept the lies we're told. Or we can choose to resist, to question, to fight for something better. That choice, in the end, is what determines the fate of our societies and really our own humanity.
That's such a powerful thought to leave you with as you continue to explore the world of 1984 and, like, what it all means for us today. Until our next deep dive, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop fighting for what you believe in.